are you?
All right. Well, first of all, you guys, I want to thank you for joining us for another episode of Wifersations. I am excited today because I have an awesome woman with us. I just want to say that we are definitely coming around the edge of 2020 and going into new year 2021. And so, in doing so, I know that we are grateful, but I know sometimes too we can have a lot of reservations about what to expect. And so the Lord laid it on my heart to have this amazing person come and share with us. I want to tell you a little bit about her. Um, Her name is Miss Kenyatta Sinclair. She is she's a mom. She's a coach. She's my coach. She's a woman of God, but she's also an excellent teacher and just an empowering and motivational speaker all on her own. And then also she is a friend. And so every now and then you need to look to your friend and say, hey, can you help us? Can you pour into us? And because I have this platform, I wanted to share her with you, the little bit that she can give us within this time frame. And I want you to be blessed. Miss Kenyatta Sinclair, welcome to Wifersations.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have seen this journey, have been a partner in some points, a silent partner, which is where I most like to be. But to see this opportunity as something that has helped me, and is something that, as I talk to other folks about, it's helping me every time. Like I always say, speak as the expert, as the person speaking, as is wise, but I'm I just happen to sometimes have the platform. I'm a learner as well. I'm a lifetime learner. I continue to learn and unlearn stuff as I go along the journey. And so that's important that people don't forget that we're just not accumulating new information. We're unlearning some information that has caused us to put ourselves in situations, or sometimes unknowingly has caused us to be delayed around some things. So I'm happy to be here.
I am happy too. And as you can see, she already just digs in. This is her natural flow. And that's why I value the connection with you, because you're just naturally thoughtful in words, and in deed. And I appreciate that, because we don't have time now to be frivolous with anything that we say, anything that we do. Everything that we put forth in the earth should have value, and it matters. And so today, I've asked you to come and just encourage this particular audience into the new year. And what I have titled this session is called Do Not Self-Sabotage. Do not self-sabotage. And it's so important because we spend a lot of time as humans thinking about what others have done to us. You know what I'm saying? Or how the outside things affect us. But I think that 2020 has taught us to reflect and to really see us for ourselves. And I do have a couple scriptures, but one scripture that really stuck in my head, because this audience is targeted towards women.
Sure.
Scripture that I have, it says, and I'm going to read it in a couple versions. It's Proverbs 14:1. It says, every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands. And then another version says, and this is New Living Translations of Proverbs 14:1. A wise woman builds her house, but a foolish woman tears it down with her own hands. And so if you are confused when it says pluck it, then you can catch it when it says tears down. And sometimes we don't intentionally tear down the things that God has caused us to be under or to live in, but we do that, with our own hands. And sometimes we don't look at our hands, or we take in our hands and we're pointing, using the finger that's pointing them other ways, and we're not thinking about what part we can play in our own success and in our own victory in our life. So, Miss Kenyatta, just take it from there.
Okay, well, I'm a conversationalist, and
Yes,
so whereas I started, I definitely hope that you and I will have some dialogue that will help the women of God, the people of God, whomever may be watching it. And so I looked at a definition of, many of us have a concept of what self-sabotage is, and I appreciate you definitely putting the handles on it to make sure people know that nothing in our life is not spiritual, that everything has a spiritual base, whether we want to practice fleshiness or not. We do have a spirit. Wherever that spirit is, it is within us. And so I was looking at a definition of self-sabotage from Psychology Today, and it was interesting because we often think about the active part of the doing. And
right.
so the definition said that it is when people actively or passively take steps to prevent themselves from reaching their goals. And so for me, it's all the passive part is always tricky, right? Because that means it's subconscious, it's unconscious. We may not necessarily be able to identify that we're doing it. And that to me has the most damage.
Mm-hmm.
When sometimes when we're cognizant of things, we actively know, like, no, I intend to mess this up.
Right.
I know what I'm doing.
I know where I'm here.
Yes, for me, it is that passive,
Mm-hmm.
sort of, maybe I'm contributing to it. I call it slow walking it.
Okay.
Like over time, you death by 1,000 cuts, and to me, that has a way of, that has more detriment to me,
Mm-hmm.
because it means that, for me, active is I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna get bored, and I'm off of it. Right? It's done,
Right.
it's over. Now I'm gonna move to something else. To me, when you're more passive, there's this continuality around what you're doing, whether you're conscious. You may come in and out of consciousness. Sometimes something happens that jolts you to, you're like, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't realize that there have been several subliminal or sort of these real, maybe even sometimes unintentional actions, thoughts, behaviors that create a pattern for you, that now the pattern is normalized.
Mm-hmm.
So because it's a pattern and it's familiar and it's comfortable, sometimes, and I was reading this and it just tripped me out because I realized, like, how the enemy will kind of like just hijack our spirits and our minds and our hearts. And sometimes I was reading that they said self-sabotage is actually a relief to anxiety for some people.
Right. Right.
I said a relief to, so you actually feel better
Mm-hmm.
when you go ahead and say, no, I'm gonna stop doing that. I'm gonna shut this down. I'm gonna have behaviors, thoughts, attitudes, or inaction
Mm-hmm.
that will just, because then I don't have to worry about it anymore.
I was just
I
saying
know the
that.
outcome.
Then you don't have to worry about it. It takes away all the. We just did. We just did an episode about be anxious for nothing, and to honestly, to be anxious takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
It
It is the energy. You're
Yes.
using that energy to stop a goal instead of pushing forward towards it. And so, as a coach, as a leadership developer,
Yes.
that hurts my soul.
Right.
If
Right.
somebody will, especially when they've talked about it, when they've started to develop an idea, or when they've shared, these are the things I want to accomplish. I believe this is, where I have passion. This is where I want to go. And then you set up this plan, and you're like, I'm cheerleading for you. I'm on that path with you. And then you see them, you're like, what are you doing?
Mm.
And when you talked about friends, it is important to have good people in your village, because somebody sometimes needs to say, what are you doing?
You just allow me to humble myself once again because I think about all the things, and it wasn't a lot because like you taught me or you share with me, you don't have to put a lot on yourself. Just do whatever you say you're gonna do.
Yeah.
And I just think about some of the things that I said I want to do, or some of the things that I have just sitting buffering, let's say that, just sitting there, and you just don't do it. And you really self-sabotage, because if the Lord put the idea in your heart, or if he put it in, in front of you, when you don't do it, you're actually not, fulfilling your purpose or your assignment. So now you sabotage the very destiny that was set before you. And so when I hear you, first of all, it reminds me of your coaching. Y'all, she is amazing. I mean, for real. She's not what I love about you, you're no judgment. You are patient, but you are very clear. Extreme. Like, I never walk away from a conversation like, what does she mean? Never.
Brene Brown said, clear is kind.
And it is, and I always say clarity is key.
Yeah.
And you really push that. But I'm saying, when you were saying about, especially like the passiveness, or just being willing, just let it go, then you don't have to worry about it. It's very humbling to step up. I was reading in the scripture too, I believe 2 Timothy, around the 6th verse, 1 and 6, and it says something. Paul is telling Timothy, hey, you're getting ready to go on your ministry journey or what have you. Now you stir up your gift. He don't say leave it in the hands of somebody else to stir it up. He don't say, I know you don't feel like stirring it or whatever, but you stir up your gift. You stir up your gift. And then, God will do the rest. But we have to start somewhere.
We definitely have to start somewhere. And when we, I know our topic is self-sabotage, but we're all interconnected, right?
Yeah.
So when I sabotage myself, I'm actually maybe inadvertently or intentionally
Right.
sabotaging others.
Wow.
And there's a set of emotions that go along with self-sabotage. One of those is that lack of confidence or insecurity. And that's something that women struggle with for a variety of reasons. And, I can go down that path of how I think women have been treated and what they've been conditioned, and all those things play a part. And so it wouldn't be off tangent if I went down the road. But I'll try to stay focused here. But even when you think about relationships with other women, so when you see parts of yourself, or maybe, another woman who is living out their goals, they may be like yours, they may not be like yours. If you are somebody who's a self-saboteur, instead of you being able to celebrate that person and push that person, and to see that as encouragement, that with all they got going on, some I know about, some I don't know about, if they can do it, let me get myself in gear. Instead of us having that mindset, we go and we spiral into those patterns of behavior that temporarily relieve anxiety.
Yeah.
But then that leaves, that self-pity and that negativity. And it's just this cycle that is so pernicious that, and mostly, again, I'm concerned about the passiveness. When it's not in your conscious awareness, you are doing damage you are not even aware of.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so when you think about these multiple identities that we roles we play, we're parents, we're leaders, we're members of the kingdom who serve, we are part of our community. When you think about all these places that we're showing up, and I thought about this in terms of the virus. Let's stop the spread of self-sabotaging and sabotaging, period. Because it's that bad. Just like you can't necessarily see this virus, but it has deadly effects.
It is.
Self-sabotage has deadly effects to our purpose, to our calling, to our relationships, to what we are putting forward as legacy for our families. And what footprint do we forfeit in leaving in the earth when we spend so much time self-sabotaging and not achieving our goals, not living up to our personal mission, not living up to who we said God said we were? because he talks to you. So you declared it. You
Right,
told
right,
me this who God said you were. And so anytime we're not doing that, like what are we spreading?
right. And it's so funny. It's unfortunate because when you were talking about um us as sisters, supporting one another and empowering one another, and you talked about the different results of not being happy for someone. I also thought about resentment, and I thought about envy, and thought about jealousy. And so self-sabotage, meaning when you're in that stage of your life, it also breeds forth sin. It also brings forth sin, maybe not intentionally, but anytime, your mindset is out of the purpose and the character of God. Your mind is somewhere. So it has to be, in a sinful state. And you're flirting with the enemy and his tactics. And so in order to get relief, you go about doing things in a way that is not necessarily pleasing to God. And it's just so important, as you mentioned, the many different roles that women have. And even as we target here for this particular platform, Wifersations, wives, you mentioned insecurities. Well, sometimes the way you feel, you push that off on your husband, making him think that that's how he feels. But no,
Right.
that's how you feel about yourself. Or,
Right.
the pressure you put on your kids to perform and to be, well, really, that's because you feel like you're not all of that and they just want to be a kid. Or,
Yep.
you know what I'm saying? And so all of those things matter, or, just moving about in life or feeling like giving up. Well, if you just really look at what you do have and begin to work with what you do have, you'd be surprised at what you can come up with.
Yeah. The Bible says it's those little foxes,
It is.
right?
Yeah.
And so, I may not start out that way with full blown jealousy or spilling venom out. But women, we got cunning ways sometimes.
Okay. Oh, we got one.
And I always say, what is our greatest blessings sometimes are our greatest curses. And it's really about knowing yourself. And that's the thing about even self-sabotage. Know what your triggers are. What sets you off? What
Yeah.
causes you to start to enact either actively or passively those behaviors, those thoughts that lead you down this road where you spiral out of control? And so a lot of people, and I'll start with know thyself. So in order for your presence to be a present, you got to spend some time with yourself. And that definitely, hopefully, this year taught a lot of us that, you know, if you didn't like yourself before 2020,
Right.
I hope
Yeah.
on this day, this December 30th, 2020, you have spent some time this year discovering you and then realizing that you get to narrate the book. If there are things that you discovered in your time of quarantine and isolation, and I just need to keep social distancing, if anything, you realize if it's something that came up that you didn't like, you get to change that.
Change it. It's not the end
This
of your story.
you get to change that. You still, if you woke up and drew breath, you still get to change it.
Mhm.
If it's a heart condition, everything start, even the stuff that's in the mind starts in the heart.
Mhm.
And so, the first things first for me is every day creating me a clean heart, because I know, not just because of how my purpose and how I interact.
Mhm.
I also know that sometimes my self-sabotage is that I call myself a social introvert.
Yes.
And so even though I sit and talk to you and I talk to several people about it, it is, when I talked about that learning and unlearning, it is for me to constantly push myself to say, although my most comfortable state is sitting in this house, quarantine didn't bother me
At
one
all.
bit,
Me either.
one bit.
Me either.
But I understand that that's not the will of the Father.
You know, you know what, Miss King, I said the same thing. I Every now and then I just, do a reflection. I'm like, I don't want to be wrong for being okay that I could go some more months like this. Like, I don't want to be wrong like that, because there is something with that too,
Right. Right.
but it didn't bother me either. It really did. Now I do feel for the things that happen to people.
Absolutely.
I feel I I am hurt and compassionate though for those who have lost loved ones, who have lost income, who have lost particular opportunities. Definitely, my heart is going out to businesses because I see what
Yes.
we're going through. But just the fact of you can't go out and stay in the house and or limit your, whatever
Yeah.
interaction, it didn't bother me. And so I've been trying to figure out, why didn't that bother you? You
Yeah.
know,
And that's exactly true. And I want to, make sure, hopefully the audience, anybody who know me know, on the other side of this, I'm definitely an advocate for making sure we can do what we can to support families, individuals, our community, as we all go through this, and because we're not experiencing it the same.
right,
And
right,
so I make sure I tell people that when people are like, oh no, we're in this together. Yeah, we're in it together, but we're not experiencing it the same.
right,
And so I think part of my reason for I would have been okay if it wasn't a pandemic. I'm fine staying at home.
right.
I'm I'm fine not getting the invitation. I'm fine if people reschedule. I'm fine if people cancel. So let me let me put the frame on that. Like before a pandemic happened, if I had an option to somebody just say, we just not the world is slowing down. I would okay. I'm okay with that.
Right, right.
Um,
Good job.
I
Yes.
yeah, I just my heart goes out, and I'm very empathetic
Mhm.
um to the reason, the cause that we are
Yeah,
in this.
yeah,
But it is when you talk about exploring, like why are you okay with
yeah,
that? So that is something that in the context of being okay, I knew I couldn't sit with that, right? I couldn't like lean into
right.
being okay with being at home because I understand there are some goals that I have to achieve that does not allow me to be isolated.
Wow. Yeah, yeah,
So even we are, and so this is when we talk about self-sabotage, anybody who says they have not at one time or another did it passively or actively,
right,
like that's not true.
right. I can remember different times, and I'm actually embarrassed. Like, I did that. Like, I really, really did that. And
Yeah.
if if you had thought about it while you were doing it,
Yeah.
you're like, girl, what are you thinking? Like, stop. Like, I wish it was like a big stop sign in front of me that says stop, but you can't help it. It's like what you were saying. Like, once you're in there, now you commit, and now you're in it, and you sell yourself to this.
And that's the other thing, right? So when I talked about um things about who we are being a blessing and a curse, right? So when you talk about commitment and dedication, like it don't necessarily matter if it's positive or negative. If I say I'm gonna commit, and so when you see that's a blessing and a curse, right? Like it can serve you really well
Right,
when
right,
you on the right path. But see, I'm a person like if I said it, I'm like I'm in it now.
yeah,
I'm in it, and so I gotta finish it. That's the thing about a goal for me. Like I changed the goal to say we not doing this.
yeah,
So I'm not gonna just lightly mess it up.
right, right,
I'm gonna make sure I gotta put my stamp on it. It's a brand, right? Just like it's a brand that if I say I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it well, right? But
right,
it's so that commitment thing for me
yeah,
sometimes it's a double-edged sword. And because I know that when I talked about knowing yourself and knowing your triggers, you gotta know it. You
hmm
gotta know it,
hmm
and those are things that are important.
wow, that is now like it hits me, and I'm sure it's hitting other people when you just think about, like you said, the qualities or the things about you that are so amazing. Like, I'm a great conversationalist. I feel like I use my words in a great way. I know how to go in and out of the room. But if I'm in a certain kind of mood, certain kind of vibe, I'm a great conversationalist. I know how to go in and out of a room. It may not be the way you think I should,
Right.
but I'm still gonna do well with that. It might just be on the on a bad vibe. And so it makes you want to be mindful of how you use your gifts, of how you use your gifts. And I was thinking about how oftentimes when we use the word manipulation, it is often applied as an attribute for women because we have strong influence. And so even in this, you have to be mindful of how you use your influence, that you don't manipulate situations or manipulate people that you care about or manipulate people that you don't care about in order to feed your own, desires.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. I'm learning already.
Yeah, because that's a flip side of it, right? So, we usually spend our lives working on our middle,
Right.
right? We got the extremes down pat.
Wow.
I can go all the way to the left and go all the way. That middle, the balance,
Yeah.
having temperance, being able to, that's where that will, I could, me personally, that's where I spend, that's my life's work,
Right.
trying to find the middle. And,
Right.
and how do I balance that where, I don't go too savage, but I don't ever know if I'm gonna be too passive. I don't, I, you know,
Not
yeah, yeah. I will get to where I know I had to work on being um dismissive and sort of
yeah. I was gonna
cancel,
say
just sort of,
a loop.
yeah, cutting people off. And I do because and why you need to know yourself and know what your triggers are. I don't subscribe to a lot of foolishness. Um, and
I
so
said that with beautiful words.
and so when I'm in spaces, because you can't control every environment. So when I'm in spaces where that sort of comes up, I'm very good one about looking for the exit strategy. But if I can't do an immediate exit, I do have ways to sort of disassociate until I can exit, right? And so then that means I'm not present.
Yep.
And I understand that that is partially a self-protection mechanism. And so where the work comes for me on that is I don't need to protect myself from anything because God is my protector, right? And so those are when I talked about unlearning things.
Yeah.
Sometimes for me, those things that I picked up along the way to sort of guard myself,
So, yeah.
and I just instead of letting God guide my heart, mind, and
Yeah.
knowing that I'm gonna be okay,
Yeah.
that I'm under His shadow, right? And so for me, growing up in church, that matters not.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that you pick up as you walk through life
Oh, yeah.
that you kind of put this fortress around you. There are behaviors that you know how to get people up off you.
Mm-hmm.
You know how to move in and out of a room. You know how to, and that's that influence piece, right? So when I learned the power of that,
Mm-hmm.
which is in some instances like awesome,
Yeah.
like it's gonna, networking,
Right.
connecting,
Right.
you
Right.
know, but then on the other hand, it sort of leads you to this overconfidence or arrogance
Mm-hmm.
because you realize that you were trying to make stuff happen in your own strength and you left the Father out.
Which is perfect because I was gonna lead into um, first of all, so many times I've heard it where people pray, humble me, Lord, and that everybody want to be humble, but He has empowered us to humble ourselves first of all. And in order to do that, in order to humble yourself, it takes much reflection and much looking on the inside. And what you were talking about, the the way you were describing it shows that you kind of look within and said, okay, these are my little ebbs and flows, and I got to make sure they making the right kind of music. And then also submission. Because to be honest, and I am really working on that. My husband said often, you're just so defensive. You always feel like somebody coming at you. And throughout life, you learn how to quote unquote protect yourself. And some people are gun right, some people don't like guns. You know what I'm saying? I'm one, I'm with a gun. So if you come at me, I'll shoot. You know what I mean? And there are times when guns are not necessary. So you have to unlearn always being armed. You have to unlearn that, and I've worked with that with you too. Just letting things letting things go. And one thing that I found that you told me that I've never forgot, and it if it don't fit you, if it's not for you, it's not for you. So even if somebody's coming at you, I don't care if you coming at me. If what you're saying don't fit me, if what you're saying don't resonate with me, if what you're saying about me don't connect with me, I don't even have to own. I can let your words, I can let your actions, I can let your deeds go right over me. And that helped me in self-sabotage. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times we spend our energy trying to do all of this other stuff, protect ourselves, defend ourselves, fix this, get away from this and all of that, when we can be using that same energy doing what we're sent here to do, that gives you passion, that gives you joy. And we don't realize that we have the gift of goodbye. We don't realize we have the gift of, I no longer want to do this. We don't realize we have the gift of, we're not doing this. We don't have to go this far. We don't realize what we do have in order to go forward, so that we don't sabotage the very purpose that, or the very assignment that God has given us.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted, if you could, because you brought it up, just talk about a little bit more about unlearning.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll talk a little. First of all, I wanted to say sometimes we think it's a gun, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Our minds play tricks on us because of our experiences and our patterns.
Yep.
And sometimes we misread cues.
Yep.
Because we spend so much time behind the fortress, we spend so much time on the defense, that everybody's an enemy. Everybody's somebody, that everybody is guilty until proven innocent.
Right.
And boy, do you have to do a lot to prove that you're innocent.
Yes.
So some of the things that we require of people to prove that they are worthy of our presence, of our attention, we wouldn't dare want anybody to do that to us. And so that's a part of the self-sabotage too, because we're then distancing ourselves from relationships that will be pivotal in helping us achieve our goals.
Right. That's good, Kenyatta.
So that's the part. Sometimes, and so that self-sabotage piece, all that, I don't do that, or I don't do all that. Like, what's underneath that?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I talk about unlearning, most of the work that we will do in life, most of the things that we will need to learn and unlearn have nothing to do with anybody else.
Right. I agree.
And so when I talk to, I said, I always start with yourself first, because most times you can resolve probably 90% of what's happening if you just take a really good introspective look at yourself. So for me, the unlearning process starts with being committed to daily, sometimes several times a day, reflection. And there's one question that I learned years ago as a Crucial Conversations trainer. And the question is, what am I pretending not to notice about my role in this situation? So before I can point my finger at you, before I can look into my environment and say, these factors influence the way the outcome was, what did I contribute? What did I not contribute that landed us in this space that we are now, this predicament, this situation? So and I ask myself that all the time before I pick up a phone and call somebody else, before I ask who else was involved, before I send that her my last email, all that. I go back and look at what I wrote, what
Yeah,
I said,
right.
replay the conversation. Was there something that I said that was unclear?
Yeah,
Did a previous conversation, could somebody have connected the dots in a way that I didn't intend them to? I'm spending time on my actions because that is what I have the most control and influence over.
that's powerful. That is so powerful.
So when you talk about unlearning, first of all, you have to commit to understanding that you don't know everything
Mm-hmm.
and that you can be wrong. Even though I spend a great deal of time being very careful so that I'm not wrong when I
Right.
speak,
Still can happen.
I'm human, and
Yeah,
so I can still be wrong. And so that's the humbling part of that.
it is. I agree.
That as much as you try to, and much as your plan is to always be right when you speak, and then you have to give that up. You have to give up wanting to always be right.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes for me, um, from being a child and experiencing some things that may have put me in a bad light. And so then you carry that along. So you're always trying to get it right. And
Yeah.
when you don't get it right, you beat yourself up, so much. And so it's like, I'm going to get it right. I'm going to get it right. I'm going to get it right. And sometimes you forget too that uh, even in your getting it right, quote unquote, sometimes things just don't work out right. And
Yeah.
that's where we were, for me, it's humbling and it's also submission, knowing that, okay, but God is in control. You thought you was in control, you was never in control.
Well, and what I've learned is sometimes we've built up defenses
Mhm.
in a time where they might have been necessary for
Yep,
that setting,
yep,
that situation. But I'm like, okay, maybe you felt like you needed to do that when you was 15. Do
yep,
you know you on the road to 50? Like,
yep.
why do you still why did you carry that? And a lot of times we're giving people the defenses of our past or previous experiences when they don't even know that part of you
Mm-hmm,
to even have any ammo that could hurt you.
mm-hmm.
And so when I talk about unlearning and not creating your own story,
Yeah, yeah,
that's important. And that's the other question I ask. Like, I always say, did that really happen? And not in the sense of did that really happen? Like, did they just do that?
oh, I know.
But like to really ask myself in that reflection time, wait a minute. Did you assign a voice to that text message?
But that is funny because that's why that unlearning is so important.
Yeah.
Nobody, I'm not saying nobody, but oftentimes there are not moments devoted to moving forward. You know what I'm saying? Oftentimes, especially within our community, we're really not taught to thrive, we're taught to survive.
Right.
And so you don't get a chance to grab all these things until we're like in our late 30s, 40s, and 50s. And then we're like, oh, you hear this music, but the music been playing a long time.
It's
You
been playing.
must have so much noise, you couldn't hear it. And so this is why I think it's so vital for this uh, season, because as we finish out this year and then go into a new year, I want to do my part to provide the gift to help so many of us unlearn some things that keep us from being who we really could be. Because
Right.
for me, I don't think I was a bad person, but I definitely don't think that I was fully whole. You know what I'm saying? And then just and this is an encouragement to anybody. First of all, I have an amazing mother. I have a great husband, some awesome children, but I have a lovely therapist and a bad coach. You get what I'm saying? And so you need a lot. to be able to function. And to think that you could just do it by yourself, first of all, you don't have anyone introducing new things into your life or helping you
Right.
see things a certain way. And so you need the help and you need the encouragement and empowerment to move forward. So this unlearning thing, I'm unlearning something right now while you talk.
So that's the formula, right?
Yeah.
So as we unlearn, we have to be open to new information, but we have to have access and the willingness to receive new information, right? So for everything I told you I had to unlearn, I picked up a new skill or strategy to combat it. But it all started. Now you got to put it in context. You got to know yourself. You got to be able to spend some time with yourself so that you know what tools are for you. Otherwise, you'll just be a hoarder of information and none of it will be relevant to you, right? And so, like, I can't, some of the tools we may have in common, they may help us both. But I know enough to know if somebody's telling me something and I'm like, well, that's not my struggle. And so I'm not going to fill my mind with that information because that's taking up space where I need to learn something that's going to be applicable and relevant to me. And so that's another part of making sure you don't self-sabotage yourself through that insecurity piece and that lack of confidence where you just tag on to somebody else and you're not willing to do your work. So anything that they're getting, you say, oh, I'm doing that too. I'm doing that too. Well, no, everything is not for everybody. And so that's another way you can self-sabotage yourself too. Not being lazy. Because that's what it is. You don't want to do your own work. No, you got to be discerning around. And your mama told us all something, and I always remember this: get all you can all you get. So sometimes that's a part of knowing myself too. I know enough about myself to know that this may not be applicable now, but maybe I should shelf that.
Yeah.
Because something familiar happened that I can't deal with it right now. But at least let me write down the resource citation in case I need to go back and get that later. But that comes with I mean, I spend a lot of time with myself, and I'm not perfect. I'm just saying, like, I mind my own Black business because I'm enough. I'm enough on every aspect of it. I'm enough in a good way, and I'm enough in another way.
That's what I say.
And so because I know, I told people, I said, I'm not thirsty for nothing. Like, no, I don't. I'm enough.
You hear me? I feel the same way. And sometimes when I think about it, I feel like, wow, I'm too much. No, I'm just saying, like, that's to know yourself. You know, I have been blessed to kind of really be in tune with myself. And every now and then I'll be like, wow.
Yeah.
The earth has to deal, you know.
Well, right. You know, and so when I say your presence is a present, my present is a present. Some days I'll be like, you're not a gift today, girl. You're not a gift. They don't want to return the sender. And so, but having a healthy relationship with myself.
Right.
That even when I say those things to myself, it is right back counteractive, but we got a plan. We got a plan. So I don't do negative talk to myself without replacing those thoughts with, so what are we gonna do about that?
Right.
Yeah. So that's that learning and unlearning piece too. Because there was a time where the negative thoughts would send me off to actions that would then confirm everything I thought people thought about me. That's self-sabotage. When we then confirm a stereotype, confirm a bias by the behaviors that we do. When we say, well, if they think this, then I'm gonna make it right. I'm gonna give them something to then hold on to. That's self-sabotage because that's not who you are. So instead of you spending time trying to figure out why they might have that or what behaviors you exhibited or things that you may have said that caused them to have that view of you and working to make that better, you spend time confirming that image, those behaviors.
So what are some of the recommendations that you give to begin a journey of no longer self-sabotaging, but moving forward in victory and with purpose and goals and focus? And also, when you get done with that, I want you to talk about how you help people.
Okay. So I would say we talked a little bit about, so I'm just going to do a summation of sort of what we talked about over the last 50 minutes or so. One, know yourself. You got to do, that is the most critical and important work you will do in your lifetime. And it will take you a lifetime to do it. It is a journey, not a destination. So don't ever think, you can say, oh, I spent 2 weeks sort of just by myself. I've been off social media. I haven't been talking. There's no checkbox for that.
Right.
You're gonna spend because we're ever learning and unlearning. You're hopefully you're going to always be looking for that next improved iteration of yourself. And because we walk with the Father, we know that He's constantly revealing stuff to us.
Yeah.
About our purpose, about our assignments, about who we're supposed to intersect with, who we're supposed to let go. And so you're going to always have to be a connoisseur of you, knowing that I'm enough, and sometimes I'm enough. The second thing I would say,
Yes, ma'am.
find you a circle of support, a village, and understand that everybody in the village, in the circle of support, will not serve the same purpose. There are some of us, this is not my testimony, who are connectors of people. And they try to get all a village together because they've been so helped and energized and inspired that they just want to bring everybody in for everybody. You can't, don't share all you. My grandmother used to say, don't tell folks everything you know. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but sometimes when you're trying to connect people, that was for you.
I was gonna say.
That was for you. That's your person. And we all got some people that be like, no, that's my person. And we weren't really taught to not share. Everything was communal. Everything was community property. And I'm like, nah, that's my person. Now I may send you some resources that way about that's my person.
Right.
Now, and then it may not always be my person. I may be released at some point to say, all right, now you can come into this fold, but and I still got to do some work on that too, because I got some work to do
That's
too.
The friend part of me laughing at you. You know that, right?
Yeah, I know, because I compartmentalize really well. And so part of my work is, because I know myself, I have to know when it's like you're doing too much. These people need to meet, but I know that I know enough about myself.
Right.
I know about, and then sometimes God he'll tell you, like, that's now you being selfish. That person is really for other people.
Right.
And so the humbling and submitting that you were talking about, sometimes because I am submitted to God and I know myself, I have to get out of my selfish stuff. Especially when you're the oldest and you grow up with siblings, you didn't have a lot of stuff that was just yours.
Did you say that? Yes.
I had to, everything was a sacrifice because you're the oldest. You should know better.
Or you have to set an example. You really just don't get to just go in your you-ness.
And so, so you talk about learning and unlearning patterns from experience.
Yeah.
There was a time when I realized that I could have my own. I had a very selfish point in life, in adulthood, and I can't say young adulthood. I'll just say adulthood, where I was like, no, this is mine, and I don't have to share. And so you got to kind of know the difference. So that knowing yourself, at the center of that, knowing yourself, is that relationship with God, because He reveals all things. The Holy Spirit will reveal all things. So in knowing yourself, know yourself through God. because that's the only way you're going to have that true engagement and satisfaction in your life
Right.
is if you're God centered. And that you let him lead you, because I done told y'all, like, if when I go on my own way, I can be very fleshy,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
And I don't want to be that way, because I want to make sure that I'm leading people the way God wants them to be led.
Right.
And if I'm connecting and interacting with them, it has to be a faith connection. It has to be a spiritual connection, along with not just the business. Because this ain't widgets. This ain't me working in a factory. This is people's lives. And
Right.
because your voice has influence, you can't play no games with people. You can't be unprepared and kind of in your own strength thinking you can just show up to something and just start talking. You got to seek the Lord about your own life and about other people's lives.
Right.
And so part of the reason why I like to spend time with myself is because it keeps you from being tainted in a way.
Yes. Yes.
And so people can't say, that's why I'm not on social media a lot. I don't want nobody saying that I knew somebody's business from social media and then I capitalized on that. And that's my thing to work out. I don't have nothing against social media and things like that. But to me, it's about being a credible source.
And I say it about knowing people's business. Even if people want to talk, I don't want to know everything. I will pray. I will give you encouragement. But if I know too much, then if something, then you'll feel like I'm coming from that place.
Yeah.
I don't have to know it. I'm trusting, and I know you do. You trust the leading of God and the discernment that He gives you. That's discernment is real, because it'll guide you to be able to still feed people, but not feed them from a dirty plate.
Right. And that's all important to me. And when I talk to people, like, I interact with a lot of people, but many people, I always say they won't know unless you tell them.
Right.
Because I know what that's like to have people that you can hold in confidence, and I know what it's like to not.
Yep.
And so another thing I would say is permissions. Give yourself permission to say no without an explanation. I can just say no. Give yourself permission to say, that's not for me. Thank you for the invitation, but no, I don't need to go to that conference. I don't need to attend that webinar. That's not for me. Because sometimes when we're in a place of indecision, or we're in transition of, like, what's my next, too much additional information introduced can throw you off. It takes you off focus, right? And so for me, I have a little shiny objects distract me. And I know this about myself. I'm a wanderer. I know if I don't write it down, stick to it, I know, because I am open to spontaneity.
Yeah.
That's a part of my personality. Like, I'll just get up and say, well, it doesn't matter, let's go. But that may not always be the time for that.
Right.
And because I'm a person, I am committed to fun. Like, to me, my life is not, if I can't have fun and laugh, I don't.
Now, just so you know.
I'm things just so you know. And because I know I'm committed to, like, I would have fun. There's a test that we do, a color code personality assessment. And I'm a red yellow. So it means that I'm driven, I'm goal focused, but if I can have fun while doing it, I'm definitely going to blend in the fun.
Yeah.
And so I know, unchecked, I will definitely prefer the fun over the task at hand. So for me, sometimes it may not, when they say some things aren't expedient in the Bible.
Right.
For me, that's important wisdom for me, because it may not be any real harm to it. It may not be wrong per se, but it will take me off my focus. But you only know that if you know yourself.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so that's where that being centered and spending time saying, God, show me me
Yes.
before I point to anything. Even when I see stuff that irritate me about other people, I'm
Uh,
like, why does that irritate you?
oh, yes. Yeah.
And so most times it reveals something about yourself. So before you go being mean to that other person, asking them why they like that, why are you like this?
You like, and why does it matter to you?
And why does it matter to
I
you?
put that 100%. 100%.
So those are things that the more you can do self-talk,
Mm-hmm.
and even when you have something negative to think or to say, it's like, why are you thinking like that? What happened? And
Yeah.
usually I can trace it back, because I'm not a person who I don't spend time on, like, to me that's foolishness to, like, if it like if it, even if it's something that bad happened, I'm like, but did you die? You didn't die.
Right. That's
You
true.
know, and in 2020, I hope people have been asking themselves a lot, but did you die?
Yeah.
Because some people did.
Some people did.
Some people didn't recover. And so I think for me, even though I was already not about foolishness, the fact that we have experienced this
Yes. It makes you
and lived
yes.
through it,
Yes.
like, you really gonna spend your time focusing on something that it didn't even take you out. Like, you still eating. You still, and so for me, is that reframe.
Mhm.
Is that reframe to say, no, turn off that negativity about yourself, about somebody else, about a situation, and replace that. And even if the replacement is simply saying, you talked about that stop sign. Say, I got these red glasses on. I wear a lot of red. I got a red phone. Because sometimes just the color
Color. Yeah. It's a
will say, stop, stop it.
yes,
And
ma'am.
so you have to be okay with yourself too.
Right.
I always tell people, like, there's not a lot of people on planet Earth who can check me. Be good at checking yourself, because then people won't have to check you.
That's right.
But you do need to have some people in the village that you can accept a check. Be humble enough to accept that check, but be humble enough and know that they care enough about you to ask you, what are you doing?
Mhm.
Because if I my village people know, if I come to you and say that, you cutting up. So you gotta have some people around you who can say, like, you don't got too far gone.
Yeah. Or what's wrong? Hey,
Right. Or I usually say, well, what happened?
you do say that.
I said all the time, I said, what happened?
And I'm like, what you
Because sometimes it's not necessarily, sometimes we don't even know something's wrong. We just have this. And so I used to say, well, what happened? It's kind of like I should do with my babies. They probably like, what happened? And they try to tell you. It's the same thing with adults, because in them telling the story,
yeah.
a couple things happen. You're giving them an opportunity to speak. And
Right.
sometimes, we were women in particular, given the history of how women used to be, you've seen and I heard, you really didn't have a voice. We are just now learning.
Yeah.
We're unlearning that we don't have to be silent.
Right.
And we're learning how to use our voice in ways that are productive.
Right.
Right. So that's the learning piece. I'm learning that these gender roles, the game done changed.
Yep.
Now I still understand that there's a time and a place for everything, but I also understand that I was not designed to be silent. He made sure that I was on earth in such a time as this. I
Yeah.
couldn't live back in the 18 nothings. So that's a part of my purpose, to use my voice. But how do I use my voice, my influence, and the timing of what I say in
Yeah.
a way that is going to have the impact, the impact that he desires and that I desire? Because sometimes we can use our voice and it totally just detracts from
Yeah. It's no
any message. You could be right, but when you say it with the wrong tone, with the wrong
presentation.
timing, with the
Yeah.
lack of wisdom,
Yes.
your
Yes.
message is aborted. Nobody's listening to you.
Right.
And so I say, use your voice wisely. And so those are things, and normalize failures.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna happen. They're inevitable. So anybody sitting up here thinking, when I fail, oh, I'm the first person this has happened to. First of all, be humble. You're not the first person that's failed.
Be humble.
Not the last person who's going to fail.
Right.
So normalize failure and don't throw the whole process out when you fail. That's where the reflection piece comes right back in. So normalize failure, but then say, well, I'm not going to throw out this whole process. I'm just going to review the reflect on the process. And okay, well, here's where the misstep happened. So I'm gonna keep steps 1 through 4. I messed up around 5 and 6. Let's re-engineer, reimagine 5 and 6. We gonna work smarter, not harder.
Right.
So 1 through 4 is solid. Let's retweak these steps and then see what we come up with. And don't be afraid to do that. You are the master of your own story. And through you normalizing failure, through us normalizing failure, somebody, hopefully that's helping somebody not self-sabotage themselves the next time they fail.
Right. Right.
I tell you all the time, like most of the time when we count failures out, people don't even know we failed. How
Right.
you not even need to do that? We the one who announce it and have behaviors, we falling all out and stuff like that. Nobody would have even known. Be easy. Be easy. And so is that and so that emotional and logical balance is important. Emotional intelligence is important. As women, we were designed to be nurturers, to be emotional. Some of us, I think, got more measures of that than others. And that's okay. But we need to know that we don't want to self-sabotage ourselves by confirming that people feel like women are emotional. They're not logical. They're not logical. They don't think things through. They act out of emotions. No, we want to change the game. And so as much as and I'm not saying you find some outlets. I mean, I have my moments too. They probably be dramatic to me in my mind. They be dramatic. And they mostly happen inside the house. But do what you need to do. Get a journal, process. I tell people, write it out or talk it out. Because if you don't, you're going to act it out. So you got to find some way to get that stuff out, to get your balance. And then when you do show up, make sure that people think of your presence as a present. Make sure people glad to see you come, because they know they're going to get something and hopefully receive something. And so those are the things, and the same things I'm telling you about what you can do to unlearn and learn is the same thing I do with my clients. Depending on I listen a lot, because that gives me an ear to hear what things I need to be saying to them. That gives me what to sort of pray for. And asking God, like, what, first of all, why did you bring this person to me? Because that's the other thing. I don't just take clients for money. It has to be, because I'm not in it for that. I don't do my business to make money. I got another job, and I know that the Father is my source. So it has to be a match. It has to be a connection, because I'm not doing this because that's one of my goals. My goal is to help you reach your goal. And it's something that I want to do. I don't want to do greediest. I don't want it to be, I want this is a joy point for me. It's something that fills my cup. And so spending time with listening more than I speak, and giving assignments. I give a lot of assignments, and I expect those assignments to be done. And I do check-ins because I know people are busy, definitely women. So I don't beat you all over the head when y'all don't. I just say, hey, this is a gentle reminder, and I try my best to let people know where I'm sliding. Like, this is coach mode. So don't get in your chest about me being your friend. I'm still your friend. But right now I'm talking to you as your coach, because you're paying me for this. So I want you to use your dollars wisely. When we're in friend mode, then we ain't talking about that. Some of it may slide, but for the most part, like, this is not something you being charged for. So, let it flow. And so hey, so say I knew it was gonna happen. One of my other identities.
I'm trying not to say nothing, but
But and that's one thing I'm learning too. Like transparency
mm-hmm.
is a remedy for self-sabotage, because a lot of times we're self-sabotaging ourselves. It's all about image, stuff we don't want people to know, or stuff we're trying to
Right.
hide. When you're transparent, you're so liberated that you're like, well, people know already. What do I need to have a defense about? And my thing is that for me has been freeing, and it is the journey to really being who God called us to be on earth. When you can just say like, no, like I'm not feeling it. I tell people all the time, um, and I don't know when it's I'm more managed around it. But like when I lost my mom, there would be days where I'm like, I don't have nothing to say to nobody. But that didn't change the fact that my none of my identities were gone. I was still a mother, still a daughter, still a minister, still a community member. But that was a time where I knew myself well enough to know, like, no, because whether I'm grieving, whether I'm missing my mom or not, my words still have influence. And that's the emotional intelligence to know, like, I got to fall back for a
Gotta
minute.
retreat. You need to
I cannot be any good to anybody else, because right now I don't I don't want to speak out of my emotions. I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want to tell you something that may be in a critical point to your life. I
mm-hmm.
don't want to derail that by telling you something because I'm not centered in the place where I need to be. So I have to be able to say, no, I gotta take care of myself. Right now, I'm from Casing Solutions. I'm on vacation to January 4th. And so every project that I need to finish, I say, hey, get it done before this time, because I'm committed to recharging, because I already got some stuff on the dockets for 2021. It's just gonna be like spectacular.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm committed to my success as much as I'm committed to my
Right.
client's success. I mean, who wants somebody telling them how to be successful who don't have their own accomplishments?
That is so true. That is
You
so
know, it's hard for me to believe that you're successful and you helping other people be successful, but I don't. You got to show some signs,
yes,
right?
I agree.
And so I kind of make sure that's that practice what you preach sort of. um you model the desired behavior you want to see in others. And
Mhm.
so as I'm talking to other people, I'm looking at my goal list to say what we got on tap for first quarter of 2021.
Yes.
And how do we make sure in everything else we're doing, that those multiple identities, I
Mhm.
don't get to abandon none of y'all,
Right,
my
right.
baby. I don't get to abandon all of that. But I also know that the Father has me carve out time because I'm still supposed to be putting stuff in the earth, right? And
Right.
so how do you balance that time management piece of saying, the Father will make a way for all of it to get done, but we don't do that when we're tired and when we're spent.
Right. Yeah, that is true. And he always leaves us something for ourselves so that you can continue to pour out. So many times we think we have to exhaust everything within us. Well, if you do that, then you don't have anything else to give. So
He allowed me to keep that selfish portion,
yeah, I love it. I love
where I
it.
tell people, I tell people, I like, oh no, I don't. Sundays, I don't work on Sundays, and I don't work on Saturdays after a certain time.
That is
And I think the older I'm getting, and it probably is wisdom, but also energy level, I'm like, oh no, no, like no, I'm not. You want to meet at what time? I'm like no, I'm not doing that.
right.
That's a young girl's game. I ain't meet nobody at 8 o'clock.
Hey,
You
hey,
know,
my pajamas on.
Yeah, and so even being able to kind of embrace that, I don't need to be on every scene. There was something I was watching and said, I'm famous enough.
You know what I love? First of all, I'm just dying. You know this is I feel like I'm at a buffet and I'm eating. But I'm just waiting for the day that I get the right words to say everything you say. Because I feel what you say. I just don't say it with all the eloquence. But that's good. I'm famous. And it got a period at the end. It's no question. It's nothing else. Famous enough.
Yeah.
That's true. Wow. Wow. I guess you don't leave it right there. I'm famous enough. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really, really hope, honestly, that we get to really appreciate the jewels that have been dropped here today. I also want people to know, women to know, that this is done out of love. This is done out of care. This is done out of Miss Kenyatta said something about transparency, and I agree with that, because I admit that I needed to see things within myself, and I'm transparent about needing to be guided in certain areas in order to get the fullness out of me. And so I want to be able to give back. You know what I'm saying? I want to lend my hand and help somebody else go forward. I want wives and women as a whole to know that just because things are not perfect doesn't mean that things are over.
Yeah.
And just because you are in one role don't mean that you can't embody other things and that you can't accomplish everything. And also, that God provides you your own pace. That's one thing that I have appreciated, that God showed me that a long time ago, that I don't have to keep up, and you don't have to keep up with anybody.
That's right.
But you do have to stay on track with your own focus and your own goal and your own purpose. Because when you don't, that's not. So thank you, Miss Kenyatta.
Welcome.
Share with us, as always, every time I'm in your presence. It is a present. It is a present, and so I appreciate you pouring into the Wifersations.